So thank you. Thanks for being here. Let's have our panel, of 4 fabulous women, introduce yourselves to the group. I'll jump in because I always like to talk about how I know you guys, or the impact that you've had on me, and we'll start with that. Does that sound good? Yay! So maybe we'll go in alphabetical order, and we'll start with Alyssa Armstrong. If you want to say hello, tell people what you do.
Hi, everybody. I am Alyssa. I am a wedding photographer. I lived in the Ventura area for about 10 years, worked a lot in Santa Barbara. I'm in LA now, still doing wedding photography and portrait photography, all sorts of different things. And yeah, that's me. I have 2 kids. There's a little personal information. I have 2 kids, 11 and 9, Malachi and Leah. They had their last day of school yesterday, so they were instructed to take a little bit and maybe watch some TV. So I have mom guilt right now, a little bit.
Thank you, Alyssa, for being here. So Alyssa and I work together. This was unbeknownst to me, is we actually connected through Instagram through some messaging over the last week. And I was like, yeah, I want to talk to you more. This has kind of come up. And lo and behold, we work together. And I didn't know it. And it was you until you sent me your email address. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Okay, Ms. Ashley, you're up next, my dear.
My name is, most wedding industry folks know me as Ashley, but I go by Ash now. I am one of the duo, which is Luna Bella Makeup and Hair here in Santa Barbara, California. My wife and I opened our business about 11 years ago, and we have our second business, which is Pura Luna Women's Apothecary, which is actually right around the corner from our studio and salon. We specialize in helping women heal themselves, and this is just a sister company to what I've experienced in the wedding industry and being in the beauty industry, of seeing how much healing women really need and how we need the tools and be able to have access to those tools, and how important community is. So that's why we're doing both businesses out of a labor of love, as well as an absolutely call to action to help support women, because when we heal ourselves, we ultimately heal the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Ash and I met right at the beginning, I think, of you and I kind of started. I think I was a few years ahead of you here in the wedding world in Santa Barbara when we first met. And, it's been amazing to watch you guys grow. And I shared that with you the other day. Sadly, it's my first time into the shop. So if you guys here locally in Santa Barbara have not been to the Apothecary store, you have to go. Friday, I would try to connect with you for 6 months, and it's amazing what you're doing for women locally and around the world. And I know that that's one of your passions, is to help women around the world. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. So thanks so much, Ash. Then who's next? Naomi, you're up.
Hey, I've been in the wedding industry this is my 11th year. Started out in SoCal. I live in Atlanta now, which is quite interesting. I have been doing this for so long, I don't remember what really I did before. I was an executive assistant, and it didn't resonate with me. I wanted to help people. I love design. I did interior design for a long time, and it just morphed into me being a wedding planner. I got married in 2008, and I said to my husband, I'm not working for anybody anymore because this is bullshit. So I decided to work for myself, and I started my business. So here I am. And we met in Provence. And with Nyachia.
We were housemates with, I know Jamie's on here if you want to say hi to Jamie real quick.
And Jamie was there too, that's right.
We were all housemates.
Yeah, we were in hot ass Provence for a while. But yeah, that's me.
And we had a connection obviously because we were housemates, but also I think the whole hablamos español. And when we started.
Oh yeah, so I'm Afro-Caribbean, I'm Afro-Latino, and I'm also African-American. So I bring a whole different aspect of looking at what's going on in the country, and how it looks from somebody who is first generation American, but somebody who's also a big part of the Black community. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk about this, because in the Black community, there's so many different facets of it. There's so many cultures within it. I think a lot of people just blanket it and think, oh, they're just Black, but it's a very rich culture. So, and I think that's important to be recognized.
Yeah. And the good news is, can I share the news or no?
No, not yet.
Nyachia, you're up, my darling.
Hey everyone, so my name is Nyachia. I am a wedding planner. I'm from Jersey, but I currently live in France. I live here in the south of France. Nice is nice. I've been doing destination weddings for about 5 years now for France and in Italy. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Yeah. Also met in France. We bonded over lunch. I think we were waiting for your gals to show up. And I remember having lunch with you and just going, I mean, just fascinated with the French, speaks perfect French, you guys. And then was amazing at the wedding we were doing with the whole French thing, and just definitely had some bonding time there. And thanks for being here from all the way around the world, Ms. Nyachia. Okay, so like I said, I know some people jumped on late. I have questions that people have asked, and we'll start with those. If you guys do have any questions, we'll address these first. If you guys do have any questions, please use the chat so we can keep it a little bit orderly and address everyone's questions. One of the first questions that I thought we should address at the very beginning that someone had asked, and I think, kind of Naomi had led to this, is it Black or is it African American? Like, how should we continue this conversation in particular? Is there a difference? Should we?
Can I say, I know everything. I just wanted to start because we were talking about this before we got on. I think that for a lot of us, we're so used to hearing Black, and I don't think it's derogatory. That's my personal opinion. The reason why I don't think it's derogatory is for two simple reasons. One, Africa is a continent, right? So when you're talking to Irish Americans or Italian Americans, they're not saying they're European American. They're telling you that they are Italian American, Irish American, Polish American. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have that luxury because we were brought over on ships or we were dropped off in the Caribbean. So, and especially those who were dropped off in the Caribbean, the history and the paperwork is non-existent. The ones who were here in the United States, they were, but it's really, for me, I'd rather just say Black, because until I know exactly what country my family is from in Africa, and when I find out, I will use it. I don't think that it's fair to just say African American. Now, I think for society, it feels comfortable for them, but for me as a person of color, my culture is very rich. I am Black, and we are Black from all areas of the world. We're Black. So I think when someone says Black to me, I don't get offended. I understand African American, I guess, was to make us feel better about us, but I think every Black person in the world knows that their origins are from Africa. So to me, it doesn't matter to me, to be honest with you.
Any preferences on anything you ladies want to add?
I did see one thing this week where it was a capital B when you are referring to Black people, and I had just been using the lowercase b, but I did see that a couple times this week, people reposting stuff like capital B, please. So trying to.
I actually had to look that up. I actually didn't know. I actually had to look at it because I thought, okay, I know we capitalize African American, but shouldn't we capitalize Black too? And there were so many different trains of thoughts about it. So I was just like, I'm just going to capitalize it.
Yeah, that's how I'm like, I'll just capitalize it.
It's me, so I'll just capitalize it, right? So.
Any other thoughts on that one, just so you guys can address?
Okay. I was going to say just really quickly that I've used both, but I also prefer Black because I'm biracial. So I find myself that when I'm talking to other Americans, I say Black, but when I'm in Europe, I find more when people are asking me like where I'm from, and they try and figure out your origin and everything, I just say African American. So I think it depends on the context that people are asking, but I would say Black as well.
Yeah. I would say Black as well, but I also think it's also very personal to the individual. You might find some women who do not want to be referred to as Black and want to be referred to as African American. So I think both are valid, and you might have issues when you address someone and you say, well, as a Black woman, they'll be like, actually, I'm an African American. So I mean, to each their own and how they choose to identify.
Right.
Yeah.
And not to be offended by it because it's their choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good point.
That's awesome. So another question, and we'll try to stick to as much of this as wedding, because I do want this to be an education for the wedding industry and how we can change. And what led me to the conversation today, which I did want to share with everyone, is that through the platform SantaBarbaraWedding.com, I got several messages from women that I don't know. They all happen to be white. And they're like, your website is not Black enough. You are not helping the movement, this and that. And I felt like I was on the defensive. Like I had to explain myself, where I was like, wait, what? And I thought, this is a point of education for me. How can I improve what I'm doing? I thought I was, doing what I can. And some of the conversations that we've had, and one of the questions is, there's not a lot of Black weddings that happen in Santa Barbara. There's not a lot of Black owned businesses in Santa Barbara. I know Ash, you kind of talked a little bit on your IG Live about it. How do I handle that? How can either myself as a publication, or some of these wedding professionals that are on the locally here in the Santa Barbara, Southern California area, what are your thoughts to that, so that we don't sound offensive, but we are inclusive?
If I can jump in, I think it's interesting that we are able to put together a lot of styled shoots, but we rarely will put together styled shoots of Black couples. Usually it'll be an interracial couple, so that way we're being, people pleasing both ends. And so I think that just making an effort to create artistic, directive Black weddings that are beautifully executed and showcasing that. And even if it is a fake wedding, it's still showing that you're in solidarity and you are allowing Black people to visit your site and literally see a dream. We are in the industry of putting together people's dreams. And so even if it is a fantasy, why not create that fantasy for the Black individuals that are coming into Santa Barbara? And also and I don't think that we'll have much of an issue moving forward because of this grand uprising of wanting to elevate Black voices and Black faces. But I know that in the past, you probably have had interracial couples and submitted things to blogs and have had them be denied. And I think that now the wedding industry is realizing how important, what's the word I'm looking for? Representation, how it really does matter. And so you won't have that issue anymore. So now that we know and we're aware that this lack of representation is out there, let's put together shoots and let's incorporate as many women of color or people of color owned wedding industry individuals to be involved in that shoot. That way we elevate not only our brands, but also the other companies that also want to be involved. So I think that's a start in the right direction. Even if you don't have Black clientele in your area, there's a way to definitely be more representational.
Great advice.
100% agree. 100%.
One thing I've also noticed too, and just what I've been evaluating within myself, and when I look at other brands, I think a good question to ask yourself when it comes to marketing and when it comes to these things is, am I approaching my marketing with luxury brands equal white customers? Because I think that's where a lot of this stuff happens, where it's like, oh, okay, well, it's Santa Barbara, it's the white people who are rich, and we want to appeal to those people, when that in itself there's just a lot to unpack there. So I think you do have to really evaluate your marketing and making sure that just like Ashley said, like representation is so important, and there's lots of money to be made with everybody. So
Right.
I'd love to just pipe in really quick too. We have a shoot coming up, and I just want to note that Hello Gorgeous has a wonderful array of many different looks of models. So we do have that resource in Santa Barbara we have Russian, Asian, Black, so many different models that they represent. So you do have access to a diverse, group for styled shoots.
That's great advice. Thank you. Hello Gorgeous is a local modeling agency for those who didn't know that. But yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. What are your thoughts, Nyachia?
Oh, I think that Ash hit it directly on the nail. I do know for a fact, because I do a lot of styled shoots. And for my clientele, as being a destination wedding planner, I've come across that in the 5 years that I've been doing weddings, I've only had one Black couple. And so what what I decided to do on my own as well to show representation of my own people is that I started having models of color and also promoting that way. So I completely agree with Ash. And I always do require as well when I do my style shoots now that we are diverse.
Very smart. Naomi, any thoughts to add to that?
No, I mean, they both, all three of them hit it. There's not much that I can add to it. I think the only thing I would say is it doesn't matter where you live in the world, there's Black people. It doesn't matter. You could be in Siberia, there's Black people. You know what I mean? So it's up to us as the leaders in the industry to go ahead and be diverse. It's up to us to market with the Mona Lucis of the world. Just because it's a Black magazine doesn't mean that a white wedding planner can't advertise in a Black magazine. If you really want to show inclusivity and you want the African American or Black, whatever you call them, society or community to feel that you understand or you want to be a part, you guys have to do your part too. You have to show them that, you know what, my shoots are diverse, like Nyachia said, and Ash said the same thing too, and Alyssa said the same thing, but it's not, they're not going to look for you, you have to look for them. So if you're saying that, you know what, we don't have a lot of Black couples, we don't have a lot of LGBTQ couples, then look for them. Put out, you know, we have the most amazing way to market ourselves that a lot of us don't use, social media. We use it, but we don't use it properly. So if you really want to be inclusive, put out a call. I want to feature more Black folks. I want to feature more, you know, gay people. I want to feature more. It's up to the person who has that site. I got rejected so many times by Style Me Pretty for interracial shoots or shoots that featured women or featured only men all the time. But I think now, like Ash said, now that they have to do it or else they're losing it, take advantage and flood them until it becomes second nature. Because for us, we don't mind on our websites putting on a Black or white couple. We do it without even thinking, oh, it's a great wedding, let's put it on the website. But it's not like that for us on the other side. So until this becomes second nature, which it should, right? Not even thinking, oh, I have to put another Black person, my quota for the month is only 2. It should just be, I looked for them, I found them, and I'm putting them on my website, period. But if you don't look for them, you're not going to get it, because we're not going to seek you out, because when we did, it was always, that's too Indian for me, which I got from Style Me Pretty. Oh, you know what, that is too Black, or that's too gay. You have to do the work and look for them. Because I know there's rich people in Santa Barbara.
Well, Oprah lives here.
Black people. I know there's rich Black people in Santa Barbara. And not only that, here's the other thing. Ash, I'm sure she has all kinds of people coming into her store. It's also working with other vendors to get that, you know, because she may know people that you don't know and vice versa. Ask her, hey, do you know a couple that would want to do a style shoot for me? I mean, it's just a matter of thinking outside the box. And because you hadn't had to until now, it's done.
Yeah. I love that. I think there's so many great nuggets of information in all of those answers. And it's about those resources. I thought for myself too, as a publication, what could I do differently? Because, you know, we're looking inside ourselves of how can we be more inclusive? I mean, that's the whole point, right? So you think about the certain type of clientele that you're trying to attract through your social media, through your publications, through your style shoots, and you decide what kind of charger you want, what kind of look you want, what kind of elevated style you want. And it's a part of that conversation. You're not just picking out, you know, the pretty things for a photo shoot. It's also about all the other stuff, finding Black business owners, which was one of the questions that I asked you, is how can we find Black-owned businesses in our area? Is there resources? And not just in our area, Santa Barbara, also within the wedding industry. Any advice to that?
Can I answer real quick and then I'll let, so it goes back to you doing the work, right? So there's so many resources out there. And for instance, when I moved back to Atlanta and I was looking for a specific vendor, I went on the websites I went on the magazine website. I went to Munaluchi. Oh, Munaluchi has a plethora of Black vendors that work all over the country. I went on other magazines that I know that have vendors that look like me. So I think it's not about if there's resources, it's about seeking out those resources because they've always been there. It's just that you never had to think about using those resources. So instead of, and I'm not saying you can't come to us and be like, hey, Naomi, Ash, Nyachia, let's, do you know where the Black people are? We could do this. I'm not saying that, but you have to make a concerted effort to do it. Because when we're searching for vendors for a particular client, not every vendor reach is for every client, right? We can agree on that. But when you're looking for a Black cake maker or a Black wedding dress designer, we're not hard to find. We're really not. You just have to put the effort out there. Go to Munaluchi, go to the Black websites that feature weddings and look at their vendor list and reach out. Because there's no database right there that's going to be, there are databases, but in the wedding industry, there really isn't. So it's an effort that has to be made as opposed to, are there resources? Make the resources, create the resources.
Thoughts, ladies?
I love what you said, Naomi.
Yeah.
And I just feel like a lot of the times we want something easy. Especially we want the work to be done for us. We want to ask a Black woman, how can I find other Black vendors? When really you have Google just like we do. So kind of do the work, ladies.
Yeah. So is it sufficient to say, because with the last, with the events since June 1st and, we're 14 days into this, and I've seen so much on social media, social media has been flooded with information. And my goal is 6 months from now, 6 years from now, that we're still doing this and having those resources available. I know that I can't remember, maybe it was Junebug Weddings that put out, 100 Black women, Black-owned wedding businesses, right? It's something that really has surfaced now. And it's what I'm hearing is it's enough to Google, hey, what do I have here locally?
Or just ask.
And ask.
Like I said, again, using Ash as an example, she has a business that she will probably meet all types of people across the board, photographers, bakers, even models or whatever. It's about reaching out to those of us who are in the community and saying, hey, do you know somebody? As opposed to letting us do the work. I think the easiest thing to say to a person of color is, you know what, do you know anybody that can help me do this and that? And I guarantee you, she'll recommend a person of color before she recommends a white person, because that's just how we've always been. So if you're looking for vendors like that, do the work, ask the people in your community that are African American, that are Black, that are Latino, that are whatever. And that's how you start, because for everyone they recommend, when you speak to that vendor, they're gonna recommend other Black vendors too. And there you go. That's a whole list of people that you never knew about, because we're not hiding. We never hid. It's just you guys never looked for us. So
yeah, I think it's also important to question why you would have to go to a different place than you would go for any of your other vendors. If the resources that you currently are using are not supporting both, then you need to demand that from them as well.
Yeah.
And then that'll solve your problem. You can just continue to use the same resources because you fixed them.
Yeah. I love that. Fixing it now so that you can continue with the resources. Thanks so much for that, Corinne. So we talked a little bit, and I know this was a hot topic button in the before we started recording with you ladies. One of the questions was, and I want to debunk this right off the bat, what are African American wedding traditions that you feel are overlooked in the wedding industry?
I don't want to start it because it's going to look like I'm hogging it up.
Oh, please.
There's a reason why I chose you to be on here, Naomi.
Right, but I don't want, I'm looking at my other sisters and I'm like, I need to talk to you. But this is a sensitive subject for me because of my multicultural background. So when you ask someone what is missing in the Black community for the wedding traditions, to me that blankets everything, okay? So let me give you an example. Again, I'm Afro-Latino, I'm Afro-Caribbean, and in this country, I'm Black, which I love all three of them, but all three of them have different cultures when it comes to weddings. So we don't jump the broom in Dominican Republic or Aruba. We don't. They just don't jump the broom. And, you know, that's something that's done here. So I think the question that we need to start asking our multicultural clients is not, do you want to jump the broom? Because if you had said that to me, being born and raised in New York City, I would have been like, what? Jump the broom? Come on, we do other things. But because America looks at us as this one group of Black people, right? But it's like a diamond. There's so many brilliant facets in that diamond that are incredible. You know, so for me, even as a Black person, every time I learn something new about a different culture in the United States, for instance, Louisiana, totally different. They could be their own country if they wanted to, with all the different traditions and things they have. But for us, whether we're white or Black, I think what we should be asking our clients is, are there any cultural traditions you would like to include in your wedding? Are there any religions?
Don't overcomplicate things. Just treat everybody the same and assume you don't know them because you don't know them.
Culture? Is there that ingratiates them to you because now you're asking them something about them as opposed to assuming that all Black people are Black and all Black people eat the same thing and all Black people have the same weddings. We don't. We really don't. We're all different. So for me, as multicultural Black person, I think it would be nice for us to ask them, what culture would you like? Is there anything that's significant in your background that you would like to incorporate? So when a person asks a question like that, I already know that they didn't do their homework. Yep. They don't understand that this is not one size fits all with the Black community, just like it's not with the white community, just like it's not with Jewish or Catholic. There's so many facets into those things that you really have to turn the question around and make it inclusive of all. So ask what they would like to incorporate into their wedding that's cultural to them. And then you don't have to worry about what traditions are in there or not, because they're going to tell you what they want to do.
100%.
I think as vendors too, and I can only speak to my experience as a Mexican, Filipino, mixed race person, second generation immigrant. Like, I've noticed a lot in the wedding industry, certain traditions like the money dance. Photographers don't always look forward to that because it's not super creative and it can get a little bit repetitive, but one of the things that I have noticed just within like my own culture and like my clients, it is important to them. And if it's important to them, then we should also approach it with that same level of respect and importance, because just because it is not interesting or fun for us, it's not about us. It's about our clients that day. So I think having tolerance for things that maybe you don't always understand, or that's how we can do better, I think, as vendors, is respecting those traditions, respecting those customs, no matter how different or foreign they are to you.
And another thing too, to add to that, and I totally agree, Alyssa, is when we have I'm like Nyachia, I've been in the business for 10 years and I've had one interracial couple, and I've not had Black couples at all. And I'm trying to figure out what that is about too, but I'm not sure. But I think when we are in front of a client that says, hey, I'm Iranian and my husband is from Pakistan, your homework is to go home and find out what that culture means. Mm-hmm. Don't just think you're signing on another bride and groom that's just going to be like Becky and Karen and whoever else. They're different. And they're going to expect you to know their culture. That's why it bothers me so much when people say, I want to do multicultural weddings too. I want to do Indians. Okay, what type of Indian wedding what are you talking about? Are you talking about Sikhs, Muslims? Are you talking about Christian Indians? There's so many. So for us, when we do have a client in front of us like that, we should say, what part of Iran are you from? What's your religion? And then go home, because if you're doing a design brief and you're trying to make it different for them and pretty and you need to know their culture. It's important. Yeah. And if you don't ask or find out, don't just assume that it's just blanket wedding beautiful and that's all there is going to be to it, because you're not going to get those clients, because one screw up with that and you're done.
Yeah.
I also want to add that culture is not color.
Amen.
Culture is not color.
Amen.
And that's something that we have to really understand. Just because someone is whatever, like you said, that doesn't mean that they necessarily adhere to that type of culture. So I think as planners and as people who are involved in the dream of a wedding is to understand the culture of who's going to be at the wedding and how they incorporate that into their own personal culture.
100%.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing, because my experience as being a destination wedding planner here in France, I get all inbound weddings. So I can get Americans, I can get Irish, Scottish, British. I get all kinds of different cultures. Indian. I also had, and Indian, and there were UK Indian. So it's like I still had to ask exactly. I just asked type of questions of what they wanted to include in their wedding ceremony. And it's true, it's not color. It's not.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys touching on that, because I don't know who knows my personal story real quick is, I'm Italian, and people ask me, where are you from? It's like, I'm Italian. Yeah, no, but where? New York? No, I'm Italian. Yeah, but from where? And it literally becomes a 15, 30-second conversation of from Italy. Literally, I'm Italian. I was born in Mexico City. I moved around the world. I lived in third world countries until I moved to the United States in high school. I was the minority. I am immersed in cultures. And, Naomi, when you were talking about Indian weddings, how many times have I heard, who's done Indian weddings? It's like, no, that's not really the question.
Exactly.
Into that. Just, and I think that that's just kind of a tip of the iceberg of the mindset. Of course, no comparison to Black Lives Matter, but that is part of the issue, is that there is this blanket of culturality, if you will, where we need to dive deeper into personas, right? Because everyone's different ultimately.
I agree.
And one email that I got, or one message that I got on my Instagram, is this notion of how weddings are an anti-Black thing. And what this person had said is, and I think I shared it with you, Naomi, from diamond mining to the oppression of wearing the white wedding dress. That was literally one of the messages that I received from someone on Instagram. What are your guys' thoughts? And I think that's maybe why the wedding industry is under attack, or it's a misconception of the wedding industry. What are your thoughts to that, ladies?
That's the first time I heard that, personally.
Right. Okay.
For me.
I think the diamond thing, I've never heard the thing about the white dress like you said to me, Zoe, when we were off. I think that the diamond thing just comes from being ethically mined. That's the biggest thing for the diamonds, because they're Black people who are digging for the diamonds. They're Africans who are digging for these diamonds. And so culturally, if we're going to be aware, we can't just be aware in one section of our industry. We can't just say we're going to include African-American vendors. If we're going to be really culturally across the board going forward in America, we need to understand that there's different things that we partake in that people may not know, that doesn't really sit well with a lot of Black people. And lately what I've been hearing is about the diamonds, because they're not ethically mined and they're using children. And these people are mining for millions and millions of dollars of diamonds a month, and they're paid pennies. And they live in shacks and huts. So that part I know, but I'm not really clear about the white dress thing. I've really never heard that before, ever.
And I personally have had brides I remember my first bride who did not wear a white dress is when I was a catering manager at Pura, and she decided, she's like, I'm just going to wear a blue, it was a midnight blue dress. That was a personal preference. I don't know any further.
Well, in culture too, Africans, they don't always wear white. Different cultures don't wear white.
Isn't it because it's because the cost of white fabric was so much more, so it was a sign of luxury, and that only really white people at the time could afford that fabric.
I knew it was.
That's why I think it's related like that.
I didn't know it was that. I knew it was a Victorian thing, but we have to understand too, there's a lot of countries in Africa or around the world that their wedding dress is not white. That's a Victorian colonization kind of thing. That's not something that, African Americans or Africans or Asians from whatever part of Asia, they didn't wear white dresses. The white dresses started with Queen Victoria. That's where they came from. They weren't white dresses before this. So when people say they don't want to wear a white dress, are they saying that they want to keep to their culture. Because if you're Nigerian, you're not wearing a white dress unless you're having a Christian ceremony. If you're Filipino, you're usually not wearing a white unless you're having a Christian ceremony because your husband's that way. So that question probably means, do they want to wear different dresses from their culture? And if they do, I'm all for it. Wear what you want. Go naked. I don't care. Do what you want. But I think it's a culture thing that we just assume that everybody wears a white dress and they don't.
I think too, this is something that I was kind of posting about. It was only 6 months ago where major wedding publications decided to stop romanticizing plantation weddings and cotton themed things. So, I mean, I'm not super familiar with all the diamond. I mean, I knew the diamond thing about the white dress, but that was something that really stuck out to me because that's so recent and very much like I couldn't imagine being a vendor going into that situation or being a bride looking at my favorite wedding publications and seeing, oh, cool, that's a plantation wedding. Awesome. I feel really understood and heard. I think that's something that really, really struck me this last week. It was just 6 months ago. It was not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you posted that on your Instagram. That was powerful. Information to know. Like, exactly. You think about we're leaps and bounds to, and sadly, again, I mean, we're in Santa Bubble over here, which I know I've talked to some of you ladies. You know, my parents live in Dallas. Naomi, you're from the South. Things are so different.
No. Naomi's from New York City. I am not from the South.
No.
No offense, but it's a whole different world up here. I'm from Brooklyn, not from the South.
Americans don't want to get married at the mission.
Huh? No.
Do not want to get married at the mission. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I guess, Naomi, that's exactly what you said. It was a different way of living, Black in New York, and now being Black in Atlanta, where you're currently at.
I'll just say yes, it is. It's
right,
different.
As it is on all parts of the country. One thing that struck me with you ladies as I was, reading your, sharing your stories is, do you think, and I think it's something that I saw Ash post on her IG Live, of being afraid of letting people know that you were Black or that you were Black business owned for a while, and thinking that there was this connotation and hiding behind that in the website until you met people. Is this really, it made me so sad. I really had no idea that this was happening. And how, A, did it happen to you? Is it something you've had to deal with? And B, how can we help you overcome it? How did you overcome it? How can we help?
Thank you for bringing that up, Zoe. Yes, probably for the first 3 years of Lunabella, we did not have our faces on our website because we knew that, I mean, anybody who knows Kristen and I, we don't blend into Santa Barbara. So considering that, Santa Barbara is such a huge wedding destination for white folk weddings, we didn't want it to deter our business, especially when you're first starting out and you're taking already a limb. I mean, just like you said, Naomi, I got married in 2008. We started our business, quit our corporate jobs in 2009. Worst economic crisis at the time. We were taking a leap of faith, and we didn't want anything to get in our way, especially our race, our culture, our identity, our uniqueness. But what was ended up happening was people would show up for their trial, and then you instantly saw the fear in their eyes, or they would be looking around us. And our salon is literally like a one-person chair. There's nowhere to look, but they'd be looking around like, "Hi, I'm here for Lunabella," and we're like, "Hey, we're right here, like, come on in," and then it would be this whole like song and dance of having to warm folks up. And then on top of that, our extra layer is that we're also a queer-owned business. So the next question is, okay, the first question is, how long you been doing this? Which is an insulting comment in itself, because it's already, you're trying to like justify, I'm already uncomfortable and I loved your website, but now I'm really questioning my thought process on being in your chair right now. And then the second question is, how do you guys know each other? Are you sisters? You guys look so much alike. You get twins all the time. And then that was also an uncomfortable thing. Well, no, actually we're wives. And then you also got the dead silence because, weddings can sometimes be very Christian and they have beliefs around that. So we had a lot of layers to get through in order to get the buy-in of this one client. And eventually we just said, you know what? screw this, we're done. Put our faces on the website, put our story that we're a white couple, and anyone who doesn't want to be a part of what our brand is and what we represent, we don't need their business. We don't want their money. And that was the most liberating thing we could have ever done for ourselves, because we started to attract the people that we wanted. And that was beautiful. But then there's also the fact that you have these modern day brides that are open to it all, Black, queer, whatever you want. But then we show up for the wedding day, and great grandma or grandma who's getting her makeup done is now incredibly racist, incredibly homophobic, and it's literally sitting in the chair like, you know, like I'm like, we're about to kill her. And then it's this unwinding of like, they look in the mirror, because how my wife and I work is that we do the hair, Kristen does the hair, and I do the makeup. We don't let them look in the mirror, because I don't need you micromanaging my work. I listen to you, I ask all the right questions, and we execute. So by the time we're done, you're a full completed picture. And then it's this, oh my God, you girls are amazing. Do you know how many homes around the country we have? Would you like to come home with me? Come home with me. That's like always the compliment. Like, like, oh yeah, thanks. We'll love to go to Iowa or whatever.
Right, because we don't have a house here.
We don't have a house here or a life here. You know, we need you. And, you know, so that was a big deal. And then also just, you know, wedding industry style, I also noticed that, you know, I understand that as planners, you have to match your client with the right vendor, but I felt like we were overlooked or not considered because we were too urban. And I don't want to say that it was because we were Black. I think it was too urban, which in itself is a racist comment, because what does that mean?
Right.
And also, how do you know your bride's not going to connect with us because we're eccentric or who we are, you know? And so to be weeded out in that way, and how we would also figure that out is a trial would go wrong with another hair and makeup company in town, and we would be the backup. And of course we would kill it and we would nail the wedding, but it's like, why are we the backup? So these are the things that we have had to face and have come to terms with. And it's exhausting.
Ash, do you think that you've lost business since you besides being the second, but do you think that people go to your website and they're like, no, they're Black and they're queer, gonna move on? Do you think you lost quite a bit of business from that?
I won't ever know the truth to that question, because we still are busy. And we still get an influx of inquiries. Yeah. But I would have to say that, yes, I'm sure that when brides are shopping our website, especially because I'm in the same predicament, y'all. We do a lot of white folks here, and it's rare that I get Black clients. So when I get a Black couple, you know, I'm so excited, and it's exciting because now I get to evolve our portfolio. But when you go to our portfolio, I would say it's probably 25% multiracial, and then the rest is white. So if they go right to the gallery and look at our work, they're just seeing white. Oh, some Skittles sprinkled in there. And then they go to our info and they're like, oh, I was not expecting that. I wasn't expecting this. So I'm sure we've lost business, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that in completely. And again, attracting the right type of client is more important to me than attracting everyone. Well, I'm not in the business of people pleasing unless it serves me.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, Ash, that you've probably also attracted more business and the kind of business that you want. Like, just any business that you've lost, you've probably also replaced that business with people who want to work with you.
So. Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's like inviting people to your home. Who do you want to hang out with? Who do you want in your home? I love how you said how liberating that was. You know, I coach wedding professionals to help them in their business, find their brand, find their voice. And that's something that not a lot of people learn and are afraid of, right? So just overcoming that fear, what a powerful message. What a sad message to originally hear. Like you said, I mean, I was crying when you were talking about how, yeah, they would look past you. It's like, how can you, first of all, you're like so engaging, beautiful, and you know what I mean? Like, how can anyone look past you of all people? I'm so glad that you did what you did and you feel good and it's worked out, because I know how busy you guys are, because I've tried to book you.
I have a question. Nyachia, did you go through that being in France? Did you feel that you had to take your picture off of your website or not put it on your website in France? Or do you think it's, no?
No, for me, I felt that, I don't know, on my websites, I always had my photo. I've always talked about where I'm from. And I mean, for me, It was always, for me, it was more of being the American that's in Europe.
Right.
So for me, I was just like, well, I'm American. So for me, I wasn't even thinking, you know, of having it be, well, am I black or am I white? That didn't,
Right.
it doesn't matter. For me, it was, I'm American, using my culture, I guess you could say, to try and get American clients to come do their weddings in France and Italy. But I've never felt that I've lost business because of that. So no, I don't really have any experience with that.
Something that was kind of an interesting something that I went through during this whole awakening, I guess, on some level. My husband's Black, and he helps me at a lot of my weddings. And we've been married for 5 years. And so when I first started bringing him in to help me, he would always be like really distant. He would always hide. He wouldn't like be next to me and support me and be there on the wedding days. And we had a lot of discourse about it. And then it wasn't until now he is more like in the spotlight and a little bit louder. And I think it's because, like, you know, I've gotten to a level where like it's not so, I guess, fragile. Like my business isn't so fragile. And it wasn't until last week that he told me it was because he was afraid that I would lose business if he showed his face too much next to me while I was starting. And that was like mind blowing because he never told me that at the time.
I believe it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I believe it. I've had, I go back and forth on my website depending on what state because I know this is supposed to be a racist word, but I am literally a gypsy. I wander from state to state for wherever I want to go. And I realize in different places that I live, I take my picture off my website because I know that they're going to look at me. First of all, they think I'm Jewish when they hear my name. That's the first thing. So I get that. And then when they meet me in person, they're like, but your name's Naomi Vivian. That's really strange. You know what I mean? So it's like a catch-22. I want to put my picture on there because, like Ash said, and like you said, it doesn't matter. You know, that's not the client you want anyway, if they're not going to appreciate who you are and your diversity. But then, you know, going back to what Corinne said, you know, sometimes you just want to be in the cut in the background because you don't want to seem like you're just, it's a catch-22. It really is. And then after a while I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to put my picture on there because if you're my client, you're my client. If not, if you have a problem with me being Black, then you're not for me. I don't want to work and feel uncomfortable talking to you because I'm Black. And I've had clients, mothers, especially in the South, who have this mentality that you're the help. And they treat you that way. And there's been a couple of times where I've had to tell moms, look, you need to back up because this is not how this works. I'm not your assistant. I'm not the help. I'm a business and I'm not your servant, you know, and that's a mentality that's here in the South. And it's hard. It really is hard knowing when to show your face and know when to be boy. Because the one thing I don't want to be assumed as, which is a stereotype, is this this angry Black woman or this, you know, this aggressive Black woman. So sometimes you have to play small, which is hard. It's really hard, especially in the South.
I second that notion of you, Naomi, of being treated like the help. That is
I hate
absolutely a real statement right there.
I mean, and I hate it. I mean, it's happened so many times that I thought to myself, well, maybe I'm not being aggressive enough. And then I realized it's just you're not being yourself. You're shrinking because you're in a certain area that you know this is how they treat Blacks here. Okay, so let's call it what it is. I'm in the South, and their racism is not hereditary, but it's generational. It goes on and on and on. So whatever grandma thought, mom thinks, daughter thinks, granddaughter thinks. You know what I mean? So for me, I just had to come to a realization that you're playing small for these people. I had to remember where I came from and who my people are, what we went through, and what happened in the South. And it changed my entire way I treat them and I act with them. And I'm very upfront with them. If they cross the line and it gets rude or they think I'm their servant or whatever, I let them know, look, this is a business relationship. I'm not your servant. I'm not your assistant. I'm your planner. Anything outside of that, you're going to have to find somebody else to do it because that's not who I am. and you have to put them in their place because they will run up all over you. That's just how it is, unfortunately.
Here like that in Santa Barbara as well, in some instances where venues owned by private people will ask you what you're doing on their property.
Oh my
They
God.
haven't asked anybody else. So things like that happen, and just talking about it, you relive it every time that something like that happens as a person of color or minority. But being reminded, hey, I am the planner. I'm the planner's assistant today. I signed your papers. You know I'm here. Like, there's certain things that happen in our industry that, with people of color, whether it's in Santa Barbara or the South or in France, that will remind you you're different.
Who you are. Yeah.
And we have to come to terms with our professionalism, our talent, and it's always constantly proving. So, but anyways, I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to take a break.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate
Kind of what, before everybody hopped on, one of the things that I was kind of bringing up is like living in Ventura, working in Camarillo, Simi Valley, Santa Barbara. There were so many weddings in my first few years that I walked in and I am the brownest person in the room. And I'm mixed race, and I know that I have lighter skin, so I know I understand just different privileges that I have. But I mean, out there in particular, it's really weird. It's very, very strange. And I was very, very aware at all times of times that I felt like I was the hired help, times that I felt that parents were talking to me like the little brown girl, like, you know, like, or breaking things down to me in a way that was just a little bit like gave me this weird feeling. And I think what I'm realizing, especially like at this time, is okay, like now I have the language to describe what that was, because it wasn't imagined. It wasn't something that I just made up in my head, or, you know, was gaslit into believing that, you know, that's not offensive. They didn't mean it. I am a single mother. I was married to a white man for 10 years. And there were so many times where it would be like, no, you just imagined that, because he didn't get it. He didn't understand what it was like. And so now I'm like noticing and having the language to say, nope, that was this, that was a microaggression. No, that was this, like, and so that's kind of what I'm learning and doing a lot of work. I think everyone should definitely look into intersectionality and how that, you know, how that conversation happens with race, because I understand that even though I am a brown woman, I am straight, I'm cisgendered, I grew up comfortably, I never had to deal with poverty or anything like that. There's a lot of ways that I'm privileged and in other people are not. So I think that's important work to do just on your own, figuring out where your privilege is and how you maybe don't have to think about things that other people do. But yes, I'll
Blacks do the same thing too. As Blacks too. I mean, and I think that's one reason probably why I haven't had any Black couples, to be honest with you. It's not like, and I've only been in Atlanta. This is my second stint in Atlanta. I've only been here for 2 years, and I'm leaving. But the thing that I realize is that a lot of times when we're sitting in front, it's not like I haven't had Black consultations. I have had Black consultations, but I think when we're sitting in front of an African-American couple, and for some reason they can pick that you didn't grow up poor, you didn't grow up in the hood, you know, you speak a couple languages, you're educated, or you're not from wherever. It's like within our own culture, which we have to deal with on our own, it's like it's a bad thing for them. Like they want somebody to be just like them, you know, and I think that's a problem within the culture too that we have to deal with. So yes, as a Black person, we have to deal with the white privilege and the anti-Blackness, because racism and anti-Blackness one goes up under the other, but let's call it what it is. It's called anti-Black. We have to deal with all of that stuff. And we have to deal with you guys, you know, on top of it being racist, not just saying white people. So there's a whole bunch of nuances when it comes to being up in front in your business and being the face of your business, because white people would rather know that they don't mind if you're Black, they just don't want people to know that you are. or they just don't want people to know that their wedding planner is Black, or stay in the back, because that's the attitude that you get a lot of. There's a couple of times I've done weddings where, it's common for a wedding planner to be in the corner and stand there and watch everything going as her team is working. And sometimes you get the feeling that they don't want you around. They just want you to be around when they want you, but you could go sit over there and we'll call you when we need you. We'll let you know when we need you. That's a reality. So you're not really the face. Who's the face of your business if you can't stand there and be proud of your business? But getting back to what Alyssa says, yeah, I think we do have to check our own biases and our own privileges within the culture that we're in, because there is that thing against Blacks where one Black might think the other Black is better or lesser, and that's a whole other issue. But yeah, we have to check that with ourselves too and see, are we as a people, are we being a little, anti-Black for certain reasons, or are we doing something wrong that's not attractive?
That was a question, that I was gonna have. Like, I find that a lot of my Black colleagues either do mostly Black weddings or none at all. So I feel like it's one or the other. Either they just specialize in Black people, or they just do not ever get that booking. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it probably is, I don't know what it is. That's what my question is. Is it like a bit of animosity that you're not just for Black people, so they just seek those people out? Or
I can't say. For me, I don't specialize in Black people. I specialize in people who get married.
Right.
There's a difference for me. That's the one thing that I think we have to understand. So I would patronize and go to the people that I feel that I'm comfortable with and understand my style. So I wouldn't necessarily go to a person just because they're Black. I want to go to the person. I want to go to a company that's diverse and inclusive, but I also want to go to a company that gets the style that I'm getting, because there's a lot of Black people that are companies that are inclusive and diverse, but they're not my style. Same thing with whites. There's a lot of companies that are white and inclusive and diverse, but they're not my style. So for me, I can't say that I would specialize in Black weddings. Now, it goes different if you say, you know what, I specialize in Hindi weddings. I specialize in Muslim weddings, because those are cultures that have different aspects to it. A Sikh wedding is not like a Muslim wedding. A Muslim wedding is not like a Christian wedding. But for me, I can't figure out, like I said earlier, why I have not been able to sign a Black. One woman told me, she was like, I don't want my future husband around you. You're getting married to this dude. What the hell? First of all, did you even ask me if I'm straight or gay? I don't even know. Why are you asking me this? Like, why are you saying this to me? I don't know if I want you around my husband. So for me, it's like, I don't know if it's a competition within the Black community with women.
Yeah, maybe.
But I've not signed one Black couple, and I've been doing this for 10 years.
I have as well, and I have not signed one Black couple.
Yeah, it's what I'm hearing a ton.
And
all of my Black colleagues, they just can't get Black clients.
I get interracial.
Mystery.
Ash, what do you have to say about that? Is that something that other people have dealt with, where they're like, I can't sign Black couples or Black people onto my business to work with?
I think because my industry is beauty, I think Black people seek out their own to give them that vision of what they're looking for. Right. So we need to be versed in Black hair and skin tones and the variety of skin tones in that family line. So if anything, us booking Black clients is actually something that because we are in Santa Barbara, we book them because they need us, because we're the only one. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I can at least speak as far as the photography side. One of my couples who they are having to, they had to postpone their wedding, so we haven't figured out next steps yet. But when I first was in talks with them whether or not they were going to book me, so the bride is white and her soon-to-be husband is Black. And one of the things that she asked me in one of the emails, she was like, look, I know this is a weird question, but have you ever photographed a Black wedding before? And I was like, that, first of all, that's not a weird question. I think that's a totally valid question, especially if you aren't seeing that represented in my portfolio. That's on me. That's
Nice of her to ask.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
she was like, the reason why I ask is because, you know, we're having an outdoor wedding, and I don't want, you know, my future husband and his family to look like they like not paying attention to their skin tones and not paying attention to the lighting on their face, and those are those are all things that are completely valid. And if you aren't experienced in that, why not do that? Why not photograph Black people so you can become experienced in that? So I do think that as far as like the photography side is concerned, because I obviously cannot speak to event planning or anything like that, but I know for me, I started booking more Black clients when I started just showing Black clients, you know.
I mean, and I ask because I get interracial clients all the time because I'm an interracial couple. So I just assumed it would be the same for like, you know, Black planners, that they would get, you know, Black clients coming to them for that comfort, but it's not at all the same in that respect.
And I'm glad you said that, Karen, because I thought I was the only person that I was like,
no,
I'm a ton.
I don't know a Black planner that, except for maybe like Shein, is it She?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, amazing. To Black planners that do, but their majority clientele is Black. But that's really the only example that I can think of, you know, a Black planner that I know of that gets Black clients. All the rest are kind of like, they hardly ever do.
Just like, I think it was 2006, I met Diane Valentine, if you guys know who she is, right? And she just put out a book out, and I was working at Bakar, and we hosted an event for couples. And that was one, oh my God, your little daughter back there, Karen. Is your kid? Yeah. Anyway, and
punks. I'm just kidding.
I asked, and it's like, you know, there was this thing that she would only do Black celebrity weddings. No, she told me, you know, she's like, I like doing athletes, and athletes, I'm Black. Most athletes are Black. I tend to attract, you know, she does super high-end weddings, and that just happened to be the thing.
Same with the other couple. It's majority basketball is like their niche of clientele.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I do want to be mindful of time. We're just a little bit over 11, and I do try to keep it to 1 hour. But I do have one statement or one question, and I'd love to continue this conversation because, again, for me, as I stated at the beginning, this isn't something that we're going to fix today. I think this starts the conversation. I would love to invite you guys back to have check-ins, you know, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, however long it takes. Forever, I mean, but however often we should do it to continue this conversation and make sure we are doing our due diligence. One thing that came up that I think I'd like to finish off with is this whole, but I'm not racist. And I've heard that a few times. And I know it's also a hot button with you guys, because I think really the message is that this isn't about racism only. That's part of the conversation. This is about anti-racism. And what is the difference? What does that mean to you? What would you like to see the difference between the two, and how to handle it with someone, you know?
I feel like it's very, very, very hard to find anyone in this world that is not racist. Like, because we live in the constructs of racism, we play along to the constructs of racism. Like, it's very hard to say that you're not. I mean,
I think another thing too, that when people say, but I'm not racist, they're getting defensive because they're like, but I'm a good person. Good people can be racist. Like, these two things are not mutually exclusive. You can be a totally nice person and have problematic views, or just little things like microaggressions. If you don't know what microaggressions are, please look it up. But like, their racism takes its form in many different shapes. So you can absolutely be a good, nice person, good whatever person, and have racist beliefs. And that's something that,
even just in your participation,
yes, like your silence, or not willing to be uncomfortable, and not willing to sit with wow, what does white privilege really mean? And what does privilege really mean? Is it something that I need to feel guilty for? No, nobody is asking anybody to feel guilty for their privilege, but acknowledge it and try to use it to help people and to open your eyes to the way that people have to live. I have never had to worry about someone judging me for the person that I love because I am straight. Or I've never had to worry about somebody messing up my pronouns or making me feel other because I am cisgender and I conform to gender stuff. So like, there are so many ways that you can acknowledge your privilege and acknowledge how you have participated in racism or benefited from a system that is racist. And I think it takes a lot of quieting that defensive part of you, because even me as a brown woman, when I started learning about privilege, I wanted to be like, but I'm not white. I grew up brown. My grandparents are immigrants. I grew up in Spanish speaking environment. Like, I wanted to count all these ways that the world worked against me. And then I started really educating myself and seeing, whoa, I had not thought about any of this. And you have to quiet those defenses, I think.
So I want to address something. So I think we have to understand, Corinne, the definition of racism. And it's not everybody in this world is racist. The definition of racism is when one group of people feels superior over another set of people and uses it as oppression. So not everybody is racist in this country, or everybody in the world is racist. Everybody has prejudices. Whether I'm prejudiced against people who wear, I don't know, their pants low, or people with curly hair. So racism is not that that's why a lot of people say, well, how do Black people say they're not racist? Because we're not trying to oppress anybody. So racism is the oppression of one group over another. Germans were racist against Jews. That's racism. Prejudice is having a preference of who you want to discriminate against. So when we speak about racism, and this was made known to me just recently, is we have to really think about what kind of racism we're talking about. In this country, we're talking anti-Black, and that's what it should be called. Because saying that you're not a racist, I'm not a racist, that's a blanket. Let's call it what it is. We are consistently in this country have been anti-Black. We have consistently oppressed Black folks. We have consistently denied Black folks the equal opportunity under the Constitution, because the Constitution was not made for us. We were not free when this Constitution was made. We were chattel. So going forward as white folks, when you're discussing racism, and Ash and Nyachia, you can jump in, let's call it what it is and not blanket it. Because what we're fighting right now with Black Lives Matter, and if anybody's on my Facebook page, or if anybody knows me, I'm pretty political and I'm pretty staunch in my beliefs when it comes to this. I come from a multicultural family. Nobody in the world is our color without having somebody in the background that dipped and dabbed someplace else. So we're all multicultural. What we want for people to realize is that Black lives matter because Black lives are the ones that are being targeted. So let's call it what it is. It's anti-Black, not racism. It's a form of racism. So when we break that down, we don't blanket everybody, and we understand that, yes, the Black people in this country, in the world, obviously, because everybody is doing this, have been oppressed. So when we talk about racism, we need to be specific in what we're talking about. And as a Black person, it bothers me when it's blanketed, because it just allows people not to focus on the problem at hand, which is Black lives have been oppressed, we have been marginalized, and the only way we're going to fix that narrative is educate people, right? That's the first thing. Second, let it be continuing. You do your homework in being inclusive. And third, which is political, is changing some laws that are pretty shitty for African Americans, Blacks in this day and age. So when you're talking to, for all of you, when you're talking to a Black person and you say, you know, let's talk about racism, you need to be specific and tell us what you're talking about. Because for us, the racism is we're being oppressed. So when black people say, how can I be racist against you? It's because you don't understand the definition is the suppression and the oppression of one group of people over another. And that's what we're talking about in the United States.
Where you've benefited from that oppression and that
exactly, because you can be, back to what you said, a good person and still not realize that you are anti-Black in some ways, or that you are benefiting off of your white privilege. And that's where it is. So when you talk to people who are Black and who are in the throes of fighting this, we're going to correct you because the narrative has to change. And we're going to let you know because the narrative has to change so that you understand, yeah, there's racism all over the world. There's racism in this country, but this country has to fix the Black issue. And then we could worry about everything else. Because I could care less who likes me or who doesn't like me, but I care about if they respect me and my life. The hardest thing for an African American or a Black person, however you want to call them, in this world is to think that we're not looked at as human. And that has to change. That is the narrative that has to change. And once that changes, then white people will understand why we're so angry and why we're fighting this so hard. It's not about we want to be better than you. It's not about we want to be the superior race. We just want equality. And I think when people say, well, I'm not racist, that to me right there means they don't understand what's going on. And that person has to be educated.
I just want to add to Naomi, because she just touched on it about equality. At the end of the day, we just want to be considered a human being, just like how you consider anybody a part of your family as another human being. And me growing up, I just always used to remember, I never used to understand how it is that somebody could dislike somebody just because of the color of their skin. I mean, in America, and it used to always just like amaze me that like people like literally you just not like somebody just because of the fact that I have more melanin than you do. And at the end of the day, it's like, so you look at me differently just because my skin is different, but you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. You don't know what it is I can contribute to you. You don't know how it is I can make your life better. Like me, and then also too, it's also too about the inequalities that we don't have in regards to opportunities. We've already discussed on it, in regards to, maybe losing income or revenue just because of the color of our skin, just because of our sexual orientation. Also too, in the workforce, if you're not, working in the creative industry, it's just that we have just a less proportional rate of opportunities that are available. And it's all systemic, and it all starts with having the conversation. And it all starts, honestly, it starts with families. It starts with sitting down and having that uncomfortable conversation with your husband, with your kids. I've had to do it. Up until last week, my white father literally was like, I don't understand the difference between all lives matter and Black lives matter. And I had to educate my father, and I was like, you have 2 Black children. What do you mean you don't understand? And so having these conversations is where it starts, and then pointing out where it is that you are having those little microaggressions when you're saying something that you think is not like when people say I'm not racist, but like, for example, what I used to get all the time was like, well, you're not really Black. Like, is that supposed to be
yeah.
Is that supposed to be a compliment because I'm mixed?
Right,
so
right.
Also watching what it is that you're saying, what conversations you're allowing yourself to sit in and continue to have without speaking up.
Yeah.
It's really starts with the individual, and things won't change until we truly change the way that we are talking, the way that we're acting, the way that we're educating. And just like how us Black Americans have to learn about other cultures and have to learn about, we learn about Europe, we learn about Asia. And also too, I do think, going back to what Ash said earlier, about educating yourself, I mean, Google, read a book, watch a movie. You can start with the 13th on Netflix, educate yourself. Readily and openly available.
One thing I want to chime in and say is that language matters. So if you're out there talking about what's going on in the world with the uprising as riots, you're part of the problem. These are protests. This is an uprising to change the system. This is not a riot. Yes, there may be looting and things like that happening, but people are justifiably angry. It's time. I also think that it's important. We have gotten in a lot of different taboo subjects with my shop because as of last year, we were holding white space to talk about unpacking white racism. And people were up in arms, especially Black women were up in arms about white women coming together to unpack their shit without a Black woman in the room. I feel like every space is necessary. So I encourage you all to get your white girlfriends and have these uncomfortable conversations and unpack it. And if one of your girlfriends says some stuff, I like to cuss a lot, but I'm really being good.
I do too. It was hard.
Yes.
Today was hard. Today was hard.
Yes. Says some things that are out of pocket or her language is foul. This is your responsibility as an anti-racist white ally to call them out and say, you know what, Karen, that's part of the problem, babe. I had to do the same thing with my neighbor. I overheard him talking, I'm so over the riots. And I'm like, I lit his ass up in an email. We had it out face to face, one of the most uncomfortable conversations that I've ever had.
Right.
Only for him I had to match his fire with fire and yell at him about how you don't understand how your language is problematic and part of the problem. And you're sitting there talking to all your customers about this. Yeah. So now you need to, you know what I'm saying? So have him really see, I'll never understand, but I want to understand further. And I'm sorry. That was huge. Even though he was so angry at me, you called me a racist, never said that. But it's like, it's about calling people out on their shit and making them uncomfortable. And right now, one thing that I'm really driving home with my community and holding virtual space, like last night we had a really beautiful virtual gathering, a check-in, is that right now we're in a collective healing, but the healing starts with us, right? And it's time for us to really understand that the uncomfortableness that you all are experiencing is part of the medicine, because that uncomfortable shadow that has been following you, you got to face it. You got to journal about it. You got to talk about it. You got to get it out of your system. You can't ignore it anymore. It's in your face. You're going to continue to trip over it. Mm-hmm. So now it's about doing the healing work internally. So that way you can stand up and be an ally to us in times of need and be able to speak up to your friends, your family about the things that matter and not feel like, well, I don't know anything. I haven't really done the work. It's time to face the music and do the work.
Yeah. And I would like to add too that, like, start a reading group or a book club with your friends. I'm actually doing one with one of the groups I have for work. We're starting this reading group. So Audre Lorde is great. I would also recommend, especially if you are white, I would recommend reading Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. I think her name is Patricia McIntosh or Peggy McIntosh or something, but she really unpacks why, as a white person, even if you have gone through poverty or you know, had experiences that maybe you think put you in a marginalized category, it really helps break down and asks you questions about how you have been privileged. So I would definitely recommend reading that. There's tons of stuff on Netflix right now.
What was that book again?
It's not even a book. It's just like a PDF. It's called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. It's great. I would highly recommend it. That was one of the first things I read, and it completely opened my eyes to so many ways that I have privilege, because going back to kind of what Naomi said about the anti-Black, like, just because you are a person of color does not mean that you do not have any anti-Black ideas or sentiments, because colorism exists all over the world, and, you know, there's racism everywhere, but anti-Black in particular, you can be a person of color, a marginalized person of color, and still have a lot of work to do in that department. So
one last thing before you go, and please stop saying you don't see color.
Yes.
It's not good to say that to anybody of color. It's not even good to say it to anybody, because what you're doing is you are lessening the struggle, you're lessening the issues, you're lessening the beauty of our culture, you're lessening who we are as a people together. I want you to know that I am Black, because I want you to ask me, so you're Black, where's your family from? I want to tell you how proud I am of our culture and our heritage. For you to say you don't see color means you don't see my oppression, you don't see the prejudice that has been against me, you don't see how you get an opportunity to do things that I don't do that. So when you're talking to your friends of color, the last thing we want to hear is, I almost ripped somebody a new asshole the other day. Sorry, I cursed. I almost ripped somebody a new one because they said they don't see color. And I just don't say it. because that's the most ignorant thing to say. Say that your color does not bother me, but I appreciate the fact that you are who you are. But don't say you don't see color, because we all see color. Because if I'm walking down the street right now in the middle of Atlanta and I'm the only person walking, and a black person robs the store, and they're gonna be like, the only other person I saw is a black lady walking down the street. You see color. You can't say you don't see color. You see it. So just know that that's not something that you should be saying, because it's derogatory to us.
I appreciate you saying that, Naomi, because that's the exact conversation Nyachia and I had the other day, where I actually said that. And yes, I mean, the way I intended it was exactly what you're saying. Like, to me, I see a beautiful, talented woman who does very well, this and that and here and there. But yeah, if we're asking, you know, part of the conversation earlier, especially when we were talking to Ash about owning it and putting your face out there on your website. So if you're asked, you know, we're all owning it. Is it taboo? Is it not? Like, it was just such a tiptoe issue. Is it, can I say she's black? Am I allowed to? Am I not? You know, it's not that I don't see the color. It's just not important to me. Is that kind of right? Did I?
Yeah, I mean,
it's important, but
it's important. But I think every black person understands that, because we've all heard that. There's not one black person in the world that hasn't heard from their white friend, well, I don't see color. And we've accepted it, because we're just like, okay, you don't see color, but I know you do see it, but you're just saying that because, you know, I'm your friend. But it's important to recognize it. And it's important to ask, like you asked in the beginning, is it black or African American, right? I mean, it's important to ask the questions, because when we don't ask the questions, like I told you yesterday, we fill in the blanks with stereotypes or misinformation, right? So the best thing to do is just ask and recognize that, like I said in the beginning too, we're black, but there's so many facets of us. You can have 500 black people in the room and they don't have the same culture. They just have that black in common. So I think it's important for us to recognizing the differences and appreciating them, and not just saying blanket, I don't see color. I want you to see who I am. I want you to ask who I am.
And I appreciate you guys sharing that, because I think that's very, very powerful, and maybe an unknown amongst white people that is absolutely true. 1,000%.
I just want to add, for anybody local who wants to do the work, there is a book club being put together that is reading Me and White Supremacy, and it's a whole workbook. And so if you want to do that in local community, my newsletter is attached to our Instagram at Pure Luna Apothecary. So please join the conversation, be a part of it. If you're not knowing where to start, this is a good beginning.
Thank you for leading us to that, Ash, because that was going to be my next question, is what are you doing, or what can we do? What's the support out there, specifically here locally? Me and White Supremacy, yep, go to your website. I'll be linking all of this and emailing all the attendees or anyone who registered. And I appreciate you putting together a support group. I mean, that's really what this is about, is supporting each other through uncomfortable conversations, through a change that needs to happen forever, not for the next month, not because it's hot off the press right now, forever, especially in the wedding industry. You know, I think it is so important for us to do that. So thank you for sharing, and I'll definitely put it in a recap here as well.
Remember that there is no roadmap to this. This is something new that, like you said, this is an awakening, not just for us, for colored people, mixed people. This is an awakening for everyone. So in order for us to move forward, we just need to talk about what we can do in our own lives and in everybody else's work industry, everything. I'm excited to look forward, and we're going to change the world, as we, so to speak.
We are changing the world. I mean,
the revolution is being televised. Yes. It's being televised.
It is.
And it's not, and this is something, like you said, hot off the presses. We're not going anywhere because we've had enough. This is not going to end next week. This is not going to end next month. This new generation of children and people and young people, and I'm older than all of you, they're not going anywhere. And it's not going to go anywhere, because enough is enough. You know, we're not afraid of saying what we have to say, because, you know, going back to the looting and the rioting, there has never been a time in the history of the world that this has not changed something. Every time there's been a riot, every time there's been looting, every time there's been marching and protesting, I can give you 10 examples that has changed the course of the world. And we could just see the evidence of all the other countries who are painting a black man's face on the mural on the side of a wall in Syria, in Italy. You know what I mean? This is not going to go away. So even though we may not see you vocally or present doing your job, you need to do it on the back end with your businesses, with your families, because I don't have to see you doing it. I just want to see the progress. That's important. So I speak for every Black person when I say that it's enough of us talking and it's about you guys doing, because you know what we've been through and you need to learn that the system is not fair. And until everybody understands that and does their part, we're going to have these little problems within industries and companies in a country. And it's not like we didn't know this was here. It just took one man dying again for this to be an issue. And he did not die in vain. And we can't not let anybody who has died, we can't let this be in vain. It's enough.
I have an appointment that I need to go to, so I need to hop off. But before I leave, I just wanted to thank everybody. It was so wonderful to hear all of these perspectives. And thank you so much, Zoe, for putting this on and organizing it. One more thing just to add. I know it's hard, especially if you are not used to having these conversations. Expect to mess up. Expect to be corrected. Do not center yourself. I know that can be very difficult, especially because we are feeling a lot of feelings. But when you do see, and I think Rachel Cargill actually posted about this, when you say things like, I'm so shocked and hurt that this is happening, this has been happening for a very long time. So the fact that you are just becoming aware of it is a privilege in itself, because you haven't had to live this every single day. So just be really careful when centering yourself and your feelings, because right now it's the time for many of us to pick ourselves up, be sad, be angry, and let it fuel you to be motivated to take action and to do something about it. And that's all I have to say.
Before Alyssa leaves, it's also her birthday. Happy birthday, Alyssa.
Very much. This was seriously, I'm very happy to be talking about these things on my birthday. It really was like the best birthday present I did. So
enjoy.
All so much for having me, and I hope we can continue these conversations.
We will continue this conversation. Thank you for being here today. And for me, I'm grateful that it led me to you again.
I know.
A plethora of Instagram messages. The one thing I can say is to be kind. Not all of them were kind towards me. Thank goodness it led me to today. It led me to the conversation. It led me to all you ladies to look past. So be kind. I mean, that's the one thing when we're messaging all of this, but take action. I'm so grateful for that. So whatever triggered this for me, amazing. Thanks for being here on your birthday.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, ladies. I have to go too. It's
all right.
a pleasure.
Well,
thank you, Zoe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for this. This was great.
We'll do it again. I'll invite you guys back. I promise. You're amazing.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.